Brought to you by IOCO, Africa's leading integrated technology services company. MTN Nigeria has hit a market value of 10 trillion naira, becoming only the second company in the West African country to reach this mark. Now, this follows a strong turnaround in the business's unit, which now accounts for a third of group earnings. After facing tough challenges in recent years, including a sharp Naira devaluation and regional conflicts, the improved operating environment and strategic moves have pushed MTN Nigeria back into profitability. Now, Business Day's Mudiwa Gavaza joins us with greater detail on this. Mudiwa, thanks so much for joining us in the studio this afternoon. So how much of the gains are on the back of a improved operational environment, and how much of the gains are on the back of, MTN's actual strategic efforts?
So you could almost say that MTN faced a perfect cocktail of headwinds. Almost 2 years ago, when we saw the free floating of the Naira coming into play, right? And now, based off of what they've been able to do, it's all of the individual efforts, have gotten to us to this position where sentiment has improved, performance has improved, because one of the most interesting things about everything that's been happening, despite, all the turmoil, is that on a core business point of view, MTN Nigeria kept ticking along over the last, 2 years. They kept adding subscribers, they kept increasing data usage, all of that. What was tricky is that you had a currency that was in free fall. So accounting for those things and actually seeing it was tough. So I would say, I won't say more than anything else, but I think the relative stability of where we find the Naira at the moment has probably been one of the biggest things to help them, at least from a reporting point of view.
And talk to me about the importance of that market. I mean, it accounts for what, about a third of earnings, right?
Yeah, it's a huge deal, to find us in this situation, because the fortunes of MTN are usually quite, tied with what's going on in Nigeria. It's their biggest market. It accounts for a third of earnings. And what happens on the macro level, let's say, for example, something happens in the oil markets, which is the biggest export out of Nigeria, that tends to filter, through to,
all other
prospects, all other industries, prospects for MTN Nigeria. And we see that coming into the MTN Group share price on the JSE, and that has tended to be the trend. So MTN Nigeria is a very important piece of the business, and what happens there usually has a big sway on what happens to MTN on the JSE. So one of the more interesting pieces is the fact that we see that the MTN Nigeria share price just this year alone is up, I believe, 140 or so percent, right? But at the same time, MTN's share price is up over 70% this year. So you can see that you have this positive momentum that is not only flowing through Nigeria, but is also being seen here in South Africa as well.
And just a side note here quickly on the share price bit, how has it been comparing to its peers? I mean, we know Telkom has also had, a jump because of that turnaround strategy, that also lifting investor sentiment for that counter. I
would say Telkom and MTN have had a good year in the market. In fact, all three of them have had, pretty good years in the market. If I remember correctly, I actually wrote it down, just so that we all know what's going on. Telkom is up 35% this year. Sorry, Vodacom is up 35%. Telkom is up 75%, whereas MTN is up 66%. So Telkom has done the best, but MTN, has had a pretty good year. So broadly, across the board, it's been a good time for SA Telecoms. The other one that we throw in there is Blue Label Telecoms. They aren't a telecoms company, but they are used as a proxy sometimes for Cell C.
Yeah.
Because they are the biggest shareholder in Cell C. That one has been flying.
Really? Are people really believing in it?
Blue Label Telecoms is up over 180% this year.
But is that not from a low base?
You can say low base, but a lot of it has to do with there's a lot of excitement around, Blue Label's core business. That's one. But more importantly, people are excited about the upcoming listing of Cell C and what that reorganization of the business is going to look like. Our understanding is that when all is said and done, you're going to have a, let's call it, 30 or so % free float, not free float, around, let's call it 20 to 40% that they will retain, in that business. So it means that they are actually going to, put out quite a bit of it, for people to actually invest in. So it seems all of that has driven a lot of positive sentiment into that particular counter.
All right, let's bring it back because we will go off a tangent. Back to MTN Nigeria. Another positive for the company was that 50% tariff hike. Has that also started filtering through to earnings?
We've definitely started to see, some of that because, some of the revenue, revenue numbers have also been, up at the moment, especially, from at the bottom, we've really seen that. There's a couple of things that have happened, right? You had the tariff increase that was approved earlier this year. So you would have seen most of it may be starting to come in from the second quarter, which makes up part of this result.
Yeah.
So if you want like a full half of, what it looks like with the tariff increase, it will be, the current half that we're in right now. That's one. The second thing is that they've actually been cutting a lot of costs, from their business as well. But the big thing is that they've also then cut a lot of US dollar denominated costs. That thing was killing them, right? It was killing them. So now you are able to pay for a lot of things in the local Naira, which means your exchange rate and, that fluctuation, it's accounting for less. So all of those things have been, working their way and helping the business to get where it is. I mean, we went from negative earnings last year.
Yeah, and quite quickly. That turnaround was quite quick, if we're being honest. Yeah. And on those, being able to get everything to work with the local currency, does that also feed into the renegotiations with IHS?
Yes, because a big part of spending at MTN Nigeria is around the leases.
Yes.
Right? And their leases before the renegotiation, a lot of those leases were being done in US dollars. So they were able to renegotiate, so that there is a greater weighting towards, spending in Naira. Right, so those tower leases, they were actually quite core as part of the initiative to actually help that situation in Nigeria.
And is there more room to run for this counter, or are we approaching a period of perhaps normalization?
That's actually a good question because there's a couple of things that are going to happen soon, right? Firstly, after this year, when we get into FY 2026. The nice thing about MTN's years is that they run from January to December.
Yeah, so
the calendar year. So when we get to 2026, that will be the first year that we get a full year of what the business looks like with the tariff increase, right? That's one. There's a new set of tax laws that are also coming into effect in 2026. So we're going to see a full year of what that looks like. What 2025 is able to show us is what the full year is going to look like, with the renegotiated costs, around the leases, as well as what's been happening with some of their cost cuts as well. And whilst all this is happening, they have been working to invest in the actual network, right? Because the one thing Nigerian consumers have been complaining about, and it became quite a debate around the 50% tariff increase, it was, you guys are across, because the 50% is across the industry.
Yes.
And consumers were complaining to say, you want us to pay more but the quality of our service across
Services
the
aren't
networks,
improving.
hasn't been improving. So there's also pressure to increase spending on that end. So you're almost balancing these things out. You need to spend on the network, but you've been able to increase your revenues because of the tariff increases. And all of that given, we hope that their thesis is that they're looking at between 1,600 and I think 1,800 Naira to the dollar, over the period. So as long as those things remain constant, right? And I say that tentatively because
Things can change.
things can change. So I think 2026 will be the year to probably look at where all of these things have come into place and everything is together to see what does MTN Nigeria look like given all the changes that have happened.
All right, let's leave it there, Mudiwa. Thanks so much for your time and joining us today. That was Business Day's Mudiwa Gavaza. Brought to you by IOCO, Africa's leading integrated technology services company.